Okay, Nicole and DeYonne, so you're from Jamaica's. Do you want to tell us about your role in Jamaica's and a little bit about the organization?
Yes.
Yes. Well, as you said, my name is Dr. Nicole Steele. I'm the president of Gym Makers, and
I'm DeYonne Parker, and I'm the vice president of Gym Makers.
And together, our organization is committed to empowering ladies, leaders, and little girls. Together with the programs, with the conferences, with the creative content, the courses that we teach, they're all designed to help people gain clarity, confidence, and the courage to shine in their brilliant zone.
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. I love the terms and the terminology and the words you use. It's so inspiring, and I don't think that there'd be anyone who wouldn't be interested when they hear those words, you know. So I want to ask you a couple of questions just in preparation and to encourage the crowd out there, especially those who are young entrepreneurs and those who are dreaming of becoming their big genius, you know. So when you started out, what inspired you to start Gym Makers?
Yes, God, number one.
Truly.
Number one. I mean, when you think about, you know, where your vision comes from, it comes from Him. Mm-hmm. And so He's the force and the inspiration behind that. And this one He partnered me with by my side here. He carefully knitted us together. And so she also is my inspiration as well.
Oh, you know, when I think about her growing up in Nebraska there in the U.S. and me years earlier in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which is where I'm from, and to bring us together for such a time as this. We've been walking hand in hand for close to a decade. Mm-hmm. But when I think about the inspiration, our journeys, all along the journey, God was preparing us for the work that we're doing. She's got an incredible testimony. I do as well. And to just know that all things work together for the good. I mean, this is not what I would have ever imagined, but it's so incredible. You know, nobody does it like God does it. So I would agree with her that the main inspiration is that it's God inspired. And God set both of us free at different points in our lives, not just for us, but for us to take those keys that unlocked us from captivity and bondage and wrong thinking and to use those same keys to help our sisters do the same.
That's awesome. What do you say to the crowd out there about your core values? What are core values for you as business owners?
They're, number one, reverence for God.
Yes.
Number one, He is the foundation of everything that we do. And so when you can tie it all back to Him, then you can see the thread through everything that we do. Yes. And so, we've got a list of core values. So.
I think one of them is respect, and not just self-respect, because first you have to love the skin that you're in. You have to be willing to embrace your uniqueness and the way that God custom created you, but then also having respect for others. And that's something that we do both with ladies and with little girls, helping them understand the importance of, I can admire you and all the work that you do and not have to compete and compare because I know who I am and whose I am.
Right.
So respect is one of them. When I think about some of the other core values.
Relationships.
Yeah.
When we think about relationships, if you think about just a relationship with you, Terri, when we bring people together, God has fireworks. I think fireworks go off because he's not only brought us together just for the sake of the relationship, but it's the relationship that changes the other things that are around us. And so relationships with people in our communities, all of that to be able to partner and get His word out.
And it makes me think, even when we talk about relationships, about the scripture that talks about the different parts of the body.
Absolutely.
You know, everybody has a part to play.
Absolutely.
And so not being afraid of entering into covenant relationships. We call them divine connections or holy hookups.
Holy hookups.
But we're always on the lookout. And even what He's done with partnering us with women of substance is nothing but a divine connection for a much bigger plan. And so relationships is one of the core values as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely.
I like that. I like that very much. And some people just expect people to do things and provide a service with having no relationship.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I like that very much. So, as speaking to successful business people out there today, what gave you the competitive advantage above your competitors?
I love that question, first of all, because when you think about the word, just even the word competition, sometimes I think people think about competition in such a negative way, right? Competition can be very healthy, number one, but I think for two things, and we've had this conversation several times, when we put together what we offer to ladies, leaders, and little girls, it's not a service, it's an experience. And we want the experience to be two-way so that we are not only pouring into the lives of other people, but they're pouring back. The other thing I would say is that we welcome other people in this space. And so as opposed to thinking about it as competition, we want to empower our partners.
Right.
So how can we be supportive of people doing this work? There's so much to be done in this field of working with ladies, leaders, and little girls that we want to work hand in hand with people who are in this field. We want to be in the trenches with them. We want to be able to offer whatever it is that we have. We want to be able to give our platform as well to these individuals that are out there in the trenches doing the same work that we're doing.
Wow.
That's key.
No, that is key. You know, my husband has a beautiful line that he has. He says, you're either running a race with man or you're running a race of grace.
Oh, that's good. That's
and I
really
think,
good.
you know, for competitive edge, you know, who are our competitors? When we're in the Christian business,
Right.
you know, we are bringing forth things for kingdom expansion and integrity and all those words
Agreed.
that goes along with it. So I like that. So what makes your business different from your competitors?
I think based on some of the comments of clients and people who have gone through the experiences that we've been able to create, I think that one of the things is just that sense of support. It's something that you think is common, but unfortunately it's not so common. And so really creating, and because of the space that we work in, a sense of sisterhood, encouragement, support, we're finding out on a regular basis that a lot of people, that's very uncommon, almost to the point where people are standoffish thinking, is this real?
Right.
Could people really be cheering me on? Could people really want to support me and, you know, perhaps share their platform? But I think that when we think about things like clarity, confidence, and courage, it's all rooted in knowing, again, who and whose you are. And when you know who and whose you are, you can celebrate everybody else.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
That is such an amazing truth, you know.
I'm sorry, Terri. Can I add one thing to that as well? Because as I was thinking, as you were talking, when I think about what we also bring and what we also offer to our audience is the innovation, right? I think about God doesn't require us to continue to do things the same old way, right? He requires us to come up a little bit higher and to continue to move forward and to continue to follow His lead. And so it requires us to be a little bit more innovative in our thinking and the way that we design experiences because we have an ever-changing audience. And so generations of women and generations of leaders think differently. So we want to meet them in that space. So when we talk about women in leadership, we talk about women in technology. We want to be able to be a supporting service for them or experience for them. We want to be able to be a driving force behind them. So I think innovation is huge.
It is. And it's so sad, you know, that a lot of people can't understand, but why are you only doing this for women? What about the men? And what do you say to them?
Absolutely. Yes.
that is a question that we
Yes.
get both with the ladies and with the little girls. What do you have for boys? What do you have for men? And it's funny because years ago, you know, when that question was first posed, as visionaries, it's like, oh yeah, let's get some stuff for men.
Yeah.
And God clearly said, no, slow your roll. I did not give you that charge. I did not place that mantle on you. Sit down, stay in your lane, and focus. And so what we have been able to do is to establish relationships with male-serving organizations, with ministries that support and encourage men. And we have no problem now referring and sending people that way, but understanding your lane, that has been one of those early lessons, I think, that I'm most grateful for, to understand what you do and what you do well. And then going back to relationships, building partnerships with other people who may fill in other gaps.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. I like that. So, Nicole and DeYonne, what is the thing that drives you? The very thing that drives you. If you have to share with another entrepreneur or someone who's thinking about launching out their ministry or their business or kingdom expansion in any other way, what would you tell them to make them make that big decision?
Oh my goodness. I think when I think about not hearing God say, "Well done."
Oh, yes.
When I think about that, I want to hear that. I want to hear that. We talked about that. We talk about it all the time because his word does not return void. And so whatever he has given the charge to do, when you think about what it takes to do that, that's the drive to me, because I cannot imagine a day where we did not do what he asked. I can't, because it's not about us. It's not about us. It's not about what we feel at that moment. It's about literally who he called us to serve. And so the drive is those ladies, leaders, and little girls on the other side of us. That's the drive, and being able at the end of the day to hear him say, well done.
That's it. When you think about that and the fact that all of us are going to have to give an account. We're all going to meet him one day face to face, and he's going to say, "What did you do? What did you do? I called you, or I charged you with this, that, or the other." And that's not going to be the time for excuses. Well, God, see, what happened was, let me tell you about it. Yeah, that's not the time. I think that is really important. And then if there's anyone who's listening who is maybe torn, just know that there is someone that is waiting on the other side of your yes. You saying yes to whatever that call or that vision or that business, that book, whatever that is that God has placed within you, there's someone on the other side waiting for you to get into position. And that's one thing that drives me as well, to know that I'm going to have to give an account perhaps for the people, if I don't do it, who are waiting in the balance. And yeah, I don't want that on my conscience.
No. I don't think anybody wants that on them, right? If we just follow the call of God. And many times people make the decision and say, "God, I want to do this. What do you think?" Instead of listening to God and say, "God, your plan for me."
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of obedience. And I like the way you've set it out there. Just thinking about the journey that you've been in and the amount of years you've serving in your organization. Have you ever had thoughts of giving up?
Oh my goodness. Yes. To those of you who are contemplating that, yes. I mean, to be completely honest, the work that we do requires us to be full, because we can't pour from an empty cup. And so there have been times when we have been poured out and maybe have not seen the results that we want. And definitely, there have been times to say, "You know what, Lord, is this what you meant? Is this what you said was going to happen here?" And to throw a tantrum. But at the end of the day, his reminder and his tap on the shoulder is, it's not about you. Right. I know you're tired, but I'm going to provide. I know you're weary right now, but I'm going to provide. You don't have to come up with all the answers. I know the way. And so when you feel like giving up, some of you are at that point right now that you might just be right there on the edge, and your breakthrough is on the other side. It's just on the other side of that feeling of you feeling like throwing up your hands. I encourage you to move past that feeling and see what God says for that next step. Just take that next step.
I would encourage people, I guess I can call this an encouragement, though it might not sound like it, following the call of God is going to cost you something.
Yes, it is.
It's going to cost you something, but the reward on the other side is priceless. It really is. And so when I think about moments throughout this journey, I mean, I think collectively, who knows how many years. I know I've been working in this space for over 25 years. And quite honestly, I ran from it, as many people do. I mean, I had my shoes on, my tennis shoes, and I was running from God so far away from the vision until I was exhausted. But when I finally answered the call, I had to realize it was going to cost me something. And for some, it may cost you relationships.
Yes.
It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you stretching yourself, maybe getting outside of your comfort zone. It may cost you education. Maybe you'll have to go back to school or study at the feet of people who are doing it. But it's going to cost you something. But again, it's so worth the reward. So as I look through every challenge that has come along the journey, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It has made me stronger, and it has allowed me to just love and appreciate God even the more. Because where he guides, he provides.
Amen. Amen. I love that famous saying,
Yeah.
where he guides, he provides.
That's
and
right.
he sure does. Whether it's spiritual, emotional, financial, material, whichever way.
That's
He
right.
provides,
He does.
you know.
He does.
Just in closing, before we actually get to the last part that I really want to talk about, I'm getting excited because I'm thinking about this last question, and it talks about how do you overcome your own limitations? And we can probably tie that in with the grit.
Yes.
So
yes.
tell us about it. What's your opinion?
Oh my goodness. I think when you think, first of all, I think there's an awareness, right, that has to happen where you end and where God begins. And I like to say that anybody, I'm sure you've heard this, will say that God puts his super on our natural.
Yes.
And to overcome your limitations could be fear of the unknown, fear of success, fear, whatever that might be. To overcome that, number one, there's a lot of need time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of need time that has to come into play. But when I recognize where my limitations are, I know that I need to also surround myself around people that are filled up and that are moving forward in something that I know that's where I need to go. And so if I can look at my circle or your board of executive advisors, like I'd like to say, and check those people to see, are those the people that are in your space that will help you move past where you're at or maybe you're stuck at? So I think there's a lot that you have to do in order to overcome those limitations. But first being aware, and then again, need time, and definitely check your circle. Check your circle.
I think one of the big things for me is when it comes to confidence, it's placing your confidence in Christ.
Absolutely.
We, as talented and beautiful and brilliant as we are, nothing compares to confidence that comes, in and through Christ. And so, understanding that He's equipped you, He's custom created you. He's got something relating to that call that He has instilled in you and you in particular. Sitting and settling in that and embracing it and being unapologetic about it. Oftentimes, I know as women in particular, we like to minimize our gifts and our talents and this whole thing, or because it's something that we might do naturally, we don't put value on it, but we have to understand the value that He sees in us and begin to embrace it. And that calls for you to do the work. I mean, when you talk about grit, it's putting, the things that we encourage of our clients and the people who we work with, it's the same thing that God requires of us. And so being willing to do the work and at every season, it doesn't stop. It would be great if it was just, in the beginning, gonna work hard, gonna focus, but it's constant. You arrive and then God's like, come a little deeper.
Exactly.
Come a little higher. And
Absolutely.
it's like, okay.
Absolutely. I
So-
think that's powerful. And I think when you talk about grit, it requires you to move from your comfort zone into your courage zone. And it really requires you to muscle up and dig deep. And I think a lot of people feel like people are born with that. And it's not necessarily the case that you're not always born with that. There are some people that are very tenacious and will go after everything that they desire. But you can also be encouraged and inspired through that as well. You'll be watching somebody else's grit, but God also gives us grit. And so that grit, when you talk about that digging deep, digging your heels in and really going after it, it requires you to move yourself out of a space that you have comfy, cozy, tucked yourself into, to get a little bit uncomfortable and to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
So that you can stay in that space of courage. Because God calls us to be courageous, right? Courageous all the time. If you, strong, courageous, keep it moving. I love it.
Courage is actually my word for the year.
I love it.
In December every year, I ask the Lord for the word for the next year. What is my word? And this year is courageous. So when you were talking about grit, it reminded me of, I've been an athlete. I loved running. And I remember going into the starting blocks with my spikes. I was a sprinter. So that's the kind of grit, it's like I'm getting into my blocks. Nothing's going to stop me. No one's going to be in my way. I'm kicking out. Everyone is in front of me. And I'm going for the goal. So I'm running without thinking about anything else around me because I have my focus and my vision is so clear. I want to hit the winning belt, I want to get through the ribbon first. And that was my desire, and each time I think about grit, I think about that. Waiting for that shot to go in, God says, go! And there we go. So thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to chatting to you again in the future.
Thank you for having us.